Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is a round 6 game from the Qatar Masters Open 2015 between Wei Yi, playing on the white end, and Stefan Bromberger. My first impression when I reviewed this game was, wow, what a smooth finish. What a nice, clean technical phase in the endgame. Additionally, this is a pretty brief game, essentially one that is over after just 19 moves. Let's see what happened. E4, E5, knight F3, knight F6, Petrov's defense, knight takes E, D6, and only now knight takes E. Knight C3, denoting the Nimzovich attack, challenging that knight immediately. Knight takes knight, white takes away from the center, looking to speed up development. Bishop E7, bishop E3. White opts for bishop E3, queen D2, and castles. Not yet committing the bishop, though it is quite commonly placed on the D3 square, but these are the three moves White's looking to get in. Bishop E3, queen D2, queenside castle, and then on move 10 there is some play. Some different options. Black castles, queen D2 it is. Knight D7, a quite flexible square. Many different options. Queenside castle, C6, not yet committing the knight. And this is a couple ideas in mind with C6. For one, it's preparing a D5 advance, establishing a pawn on one of the four center squares, and it opens a door for the queen to strike at both A2 and rake this whole fifth rank. So C4, this is aimed at the D5 advance. Can't get that in so easily. Knight C5. Another option is, just to point out one other idea, it would be knight to B6. And then after, let's say, bishop D3, getting another developing move in, White can follow up with a developing move and now start to throw a punch at the C4 pawn. We do not have this. Instead, it is knight C5. And here, White now gives up the bishops. Bishop takes knight. D takes. And the queens live in this one. Queen F4. The rook is hitting the queen now. Queen A5. Throwing a punch at A2, something that is ignored for the moment. Bishop D3. And now bishop F6. There is no time to take on A2 because queen E4. Both bishop and H7 are hit. This check amounts to nothing. After king D2, there's just a third problem now. The queen, bishop, and H7 still an issue. Check C3, and it's still the same story. So, no time to take on A2. First, you have to meet this threat against the bishop. It's an unprotected piece. Black is tactically vulnerable. Bishop F6 first. Only now A3. Bishop E6. Development. Quite a natural square. This is an even position. Knight G5. Pressure on both E6 and H7. Black gives that dark square bishop right back in order to maintain the structure. Otherwise, knight takes bishop. White will have to work with an isolated e-pawn. So it's bishop takes knight, queen takes bishop. Black rook gets developed to the d file. The last white rook gets working. And all pieces are now working. This is Yeah, not too much going on. Slight pull for white, but maybe a better placed queen. She's the black queen, not so well placed, not as well placed, let's just say, but it really should not amount to too much of a difference. And so what to do here, how to improve your pieces from this point. It's white's turn. Played f4. This is a very strong bishop, and white is looking to disrupt its position and potentially establish a pawn on f6. This would certainly stir up some trouble against the black king side. Pawn on f6, super dangerous. So f4 it is, h6, queen h5, and now f6. This is basically a losing move. A better move for black is to return home with the bishop and welcome some exchanges. We can see not only one pair of rooks come off, but also two. Just have a queen and bishop ending alone. Something like this can take shape where the queen returns to a more central location, and it's difficult to see how one side or the other is going to win this position. But we did not have bishop c8, instead a very weakening move, f6. And this is the one position, if I usually like to throw pop quizzes at you, and this is the big pop quiz in this game here. What would you do in this position as white? If you'd like to spend some time here, pause the video and think about it. What is the winning continuation or the winning idea? What would you do as white? Again, if you'd like to, go ahead, pause the video, and I'm just going to dive right in. Okay. The winning continuation is bishop g6. Black is now very limited. The rook is hit, and not very many options. If he is playing to, let's say, e7, he can't go too many other places. He has to keep a watchful eye over the bishop. We could have rook takes rook, queen takes rook, and now rook takes bishop, with the idea of a follow-up fork. White is winning up a piece. So what black needs to do, what is best, is to capture on d1. And now how to recapture? Queen takes rook. Now we have the rook hit. This pressure is still maintained. And what do you do at this point? Playing a move like rook e7, one of the moves it runs into is f5. This rook's unprotected. The bishop's hit. If he moves, you grab the rook. What does black do? Rook to d8. Can you spot the move from this position? Can you spot the winning idea from this position here? If you'd like to take one more pause, feel free to do that. Okay. It's a queen sack. Rook takes bishop. Rook takes queen, king takes rook. And this bishop and rook are enormous. The threat is mate. And how do you parry that? The queen's the only one who could prevent that. Queen d8 check. King e2. The position of both bishop and rook are so strong that they negate both black king and queen. These highlighted pieces offset one another. White from this position is basically playing, let's say, up a king. What can black do? The queen has to stay here to defend e8. Otherwise, it's just mate. and there's nothing else to do. The queen is very limited. The king has to come over to f8. That's what we have, king f8. And what does white do in the meantime? Does white give check on e8 and picks up the queen right away? No. White recognizes that black is tied right down, completely restricted. Again, it's a rook and bishop who are restricting both king and queen. White is playing up a king and looks to now slowly improve the king position, and there is absolutely nothing that black can do about it. The idea here, the winning idea, and when you see this position here, you should already view it as I could enter a king and pawn ending whenever I want as white with this rook to e8 idea, where there will follow queen takes rook, bishop takes, and then after the king recaptures, he ends up on e8. What does white do in the meantime? Slowly improves the extra piece that he has, the king. King f3, where's he going? g4? No, he's going one step further. h5? Yes. He's getting all the way to h5, and then it becomes a king and pawn ending, and we just have to do a little bit of counting to make sure we have enough tempi, just so that we could establish a winning king and pawn ending, and there's just nothing that black can do. He's completely tied down. It may appear that black could do some type of perpetual with starting with queen to d1, but that's no issue at all. Should queen d1 be played, simply king g3, and there is not a good follow-up check. The queen can do nothing but return back here to defend against mate. So what does black do? Shuffles. There is nothing else to do. Queen d7. The rook simply backs up, maintains itself on the e-file, watches over the d1 square, so now there's not even a check on d1. Queen d8, king g4, queen d7, king h5, a nice little king walk, again recognizing the restricted black side. King and queen are dead. Queen d8, a4, and this is where it's now coming down to a little bit of counting. With this a4 move, white is trying to, let's say, provoke some black pawns to move to exhaust some tempi. The short story here is that white will push both g and h pawn right up to this fourth rank. When the rook plays here to capture, the queen will recapture, the bishop will recapture, the king will recapture, and then the very next move white will play, before the king could play to f7, is king g6. The king will then be forced back to f8 to defend against g7, and then white will push their king to h7, and then it becomes a counting game. Who will have enough reserve tempi to win that king and pawn ending? It will most certainly be white, and there are many different ways to go about it. This is the approach that white took. First starting with a4, looking to resolve the tempi, let's say, on the queen side of the board. Black follows up with a5, and there's many different permutations we could be going through, many different structural shifts we can see on the queen side. What needs to happen on the queen side is, well, for as long as white has just as many tempi as black, or more, just as many tempi or more on the queen side, it will be a win. After a4, we had a5, and let's see how things play out. g4, still nothing black can do in the meantime. Queen d7, h4, Still shuffling, and if we just, after this a5 move, you'll note black only has this b6 move. He has one tempo on the queen side. If this position is stripped where you're not seeing the d file through the h file, none of this board here, and we just had to make pawn moves, white could do this, black could do that, white could do this, and now black is stuck. Playing b5, white captures twice and will have a passed pawn. White has an extra tempo on the queen side. And even if they didn't have that extra tempo, I believe instead of playing this h4 move, white could always keep this h-pawn back at his home base. And that way he has two reserve tempi. He can maybe play h3 or h4. And I think that would be also another fine approach from this position. In the game, h4 was played, but if white immediately goes in for the rook check, this is sufficient as well, retaining some tempi with the h-pawn. So, in the game it was h4. Now, only at this point, white could have played this rook move for the past, I don't know, about 10 moves. Only at this point, only after first improving the king position, advancing these pawns like so, do we have finally rook e8, queen takes, bishop takes, king takes, and now the white king invades. Look at the strong king position, packing a strong punch, of course. Black needs to defend g7, king h7, and after king to f7, g5, and black already resigned. There's nothing to do. h6 is attacked twice, cannot maintain this point, so how play might have continued. H takes g, h takes, and what do you do as black? If we look at the queen side, well, nothing's going to happen there. b6 is met with b3. White even has an extra tempo if he needs it by playing c3. And now it's back to black to move. And what are your options? If the king plays back to f8, white can play g6, and now there are as many tempi as white needs with the king. Not very many, but let's say after f5 the king plays here. Now the king will be forced away from the g-pawn and take the pawn and then promote soon thereafter. So king f8 would not be working in this position. And suppose f5. On f5 you can play king h8, knowing that king f8 will once again be met with g6, and then the king will soon have to leave defense of g7. He could always go back and forth like this. However, what about instead of king f8, king g6? On king g6 we play king g8. f7, h7 are covered. f6 and h6 are covered. The king has to leave, and if we just do a little counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to queen, whereas black it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not fast enough. So it doesn't matter how you slice it in this one, white is going to be winning. There's one other idea related to the shifts on the king side of the board regarding the pawn structure. Suppose f takes g, f takes g, and now what do you do as black? If you push your pawn, king h6, and you're getting this pawn next and winning. And if you play to f8, same story. We push here, and we're going to be winning that g-pawn in short order. It just came out to be too smooth, really. This endgame position, white had plenty of tempi on the queen side. a5 was maybe not the best. If we have a look at a different, if I'm to just highlight one other scenario here on the queen side, suppose instead of a5 there was, I don't know, b6. You could also, not move any pawns at all and just keep shuffling. If that's the case, white will push further with a5, and you could play around with it some, and you're going to see that white will always be have just as many tempi on the queen side, if not more, than black. And that's all that is needed in order to win this king and pawn ending. If in reply to a4 there was b6, we can once again have g4, h4, and we could actually already go in for it at this point. And black has 2 tempi, white has a couple tempi like this. We're once again going to have a similar situation with this key move g5. It's important that this g-pawn has the potential to get up to g6, because that's what's going to cut away one of these squares from the black king and eventually force it away from defending the g7 pawn. If black plays a6, we can have b3. If there's a5, we could do c3, and this will once again be working out. White will be winning that. One other try is to, let's say, play b5. We can take again, and we could play this nice move. Again, not the only win, but something as simple as c3, being in a position to meet b4 with c4, and c4 with b4, and it is then back to black to move. Just as an example, b4, c4, black has to move again, and we've already covered the different scenarios that occur now on the king side of the board. So, very interesting game, really smooth. I could just zip right through it again. It was really that fast out of the Petrov. Petrov's defense, Nimzovich attack. Yeah, the better move was to return the bishop to c8 and welcome some rook exchanges. This f6 move was really asking for trouble. It was pounced on right away. This is now a great gap in the black position, and it goes right into this queen sacrifice in an unfortunate position where both, again, bishop and rook restrict the queen and king, and white is up a king. Has all day to improve his position however he would like. Gets the king all the way up to h5, pushes the g-pawn and h-pawn up, and at the right moment goes in for the most simplest of endings, king and pawn. Well, they're not always simple, but in this one, it simplified a great deal to this winning king and pawn ending. And again, after this g5 move, black threw in the towel. So, interesting game. Feel free to leave any feedback on this one. I really enjoyed going through this one, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. So that's all for now. Take care. Bye.